When a young boy wandered into the dense forest and vanished without a trace, his family feared the worst. But deep in the wilderness, an unexpected guardian was already watching over him. The morning sun rose gently over the quiet village on the edge of the forest. It was a day like any other in rural India, the kind of day where life followed a steady, predictable rhythm. Roosters crowed, farmers tended to their fields, and children played in the dusty paths between small houses. Among them was Arjun, a bright-eyed 6-year-old boy with a restless curiosity that often led him to explore beyond familiar boundaries. His parents, like many in the village, trusted the safety of the surroundings. They had grown up here themselves, where the forest provided wood for their fires and wild fruits during the harvest season. That morning, as his mother prepared breakfast and his father sharpened farming tools, Arjun's gaze drifted toward the wall of green beyond the fields. The forest had always fascinated him. Its tall trees seemed to whisper secrets in the wind. Birds sang melodies from hidden branches, and now and then deer could be seen darting between the shadows. "Stay close to the house," his mother had warned, as she always did. But curiosity is a powerful force, especially for a child who dreams of adventures. After breakfast, Arjun helped his father gather kindling at the edge of the woods. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patches of golden light on the ground. As his father became absorbed in collecting wood, Arjun's eyes followed a fluttering butterfly, its wings a vibrant splash of color. Without thinking, he stepped deeper into the forest, his small feet barely making a sound on the soft earth. The butterfly danced ahead, teasing him just out of reach, and Arjun followed, giggling softly. Deeper and deeper he went, until the sounds of the village faded behind him, swallowed by the thick embrace of the forest. When the butterfly finally vanished, Arjun stopped and looked around. Suddenly, the world seemed too big, too quiet. The towering trees looked unfamiliar. Every direction appeared the same. Endless green and twisting paths lost beneath a blanket of fallen leaves. Panic tightened his chest. "Papa?" he called out, his voice small and uncertain. But only the echoes of the forest answered him. Back at the village, it didn't take long for Arjun's father to realize something was wrong. He called for his son, expecting the boy to dart out from behind a tree, laughing. But there was no response. His heart quickened. Other villagers joined the search as concern spread through the community. They scoured the paths, shouting Arjun's name, their voices growing more desperate with each passing minute. Hours slipped away, and still there was no sign of the boy. The sun sank lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. As darkness crept in, fear tightened its grip on the villagers' hearts. Nightfall in the forest was no place for a child. Predators lurked in the shadows, jackals, wild dogs, even leopards. And then, of course, there were the wolves. Everyone knew the stories. Wolves were feared hunters of the night, creatures that moved silently beneath the cover of darkness. If Arjun was still out there, time was running out. As the first day ended without any sign of the boy, the search parties grew larger and more urgent. Torches flickered in the night as villagers braved the darkness, calling out into the void. But the vastness of the forest swallowed their voices whole. By morning, exhaustion lined their faces, but they refused to give up. They knew the odds were slim, but hope, fragile as it was, still burned in their chests. What they didn't know was that deep within the tangled heart of the forest, Arjun was still alive, and he was not alone. The first night had been the hardest. Arjun, cold and frightened, had curled up beneath a large tree. Tears had streaked his cheeks as he whimpered for his parents, but only the rustle of leaves and distant cries of animals filled the air. As the temperature dropped, he shivered uncontrollably, clutching his knees to his chest. That's when he first saw the eyes, glowing faintly in the shadows, watching him with quiet intensity. A wolf. The creature stepped closer, its large paws making barely a sound on the forest floor. Arjun froze, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He had heard tales of wolves, how they hunted in packs, how they stalked their prey under the cover of night. But this wolf did not attack. It stood still, head slightly tilted, as if studying the small, trembling boy. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, to Arjun's astonishment, the wolf lay down a short distance away, curling its body into a protective arc. Its eyes never left him, as though silently promising that no harm would come. Throughout the night, the wolf kept its silent vigil. When the cries of other predators echoed through the darkness, the wolf's ears pricked up, and a low growl rumbled from its throat. The sounds faded, and quiet returned. Arjun, too exhausted to stay awake, eventually drifted into uneasy sleep, lulled by the steady presence of his unexpected guardian. Morning came, pale and cold. Arjun woke to find the wolf still there, watching over him. Weak from hunger and chilled to the bone, he didn't have the strength to run. But something deep inside him told him there was no need to fear. The wolf stood, stretched its powerful frame, and took a few slow steps away before looking back, as if urging Arjun to follow. Barely understanding why, the boy rose unsteadily to his feet and stumbled after the wolf. Throughout that second day, the wolf led Arjun through the dense underbrush, keeping him away from dangerous ravines and tangled thickets. Whenever Arjun stumbled or fell, the wolf paused, waiting patiently for him to rise again. At times, the wolf would dart ahead and return with small movements of brush or signs of nearby water, guiding Arjun to drink from a clear stream. Though he was too weak to understand fully, Arjun felt the strange comfort of the wolf's presence. He was no longer alone in the vast, terrifying wilderness, and even in his fear, a flicker of trust began to grow. Back in the village, news of the missing boy spread to neighboring communities. More searchers arrived, combing the forest with growing desperation. They found no footprints, no clothing, no clues, only the relentless sprawl of trees and shadows. Many feared the worst. The second night fell, colder than the first, but once again the wolf curled protectively near the boy, shielding him from the chill. When nocturnal predators prowled too close, the wolf rose and let out warning growls, sending them slinking back into the dark. Arjun, despite his hunger and fatigue, found a fragile sense of safety in the wolf's presence. The fear that had gripped him at the start of his ordeal had softened, replaced by awe at the silent protector by his side. As dawn broke on the third day, searchers noticed something strange. Tracks, not only of a child, but alongside them, the unmistakable prints of a wolf. Confusion rippled through the group. Was it a sign of tragedy? Or something far more mysterious? Driven by urgency, they followed the trail, hearts pounding with hope and fear in equal measure. What they found would stay with them forever. As the third day in the wilderness dawned, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Pale sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting long shadows across the damp earth. For Arjun, the world had become a strange balance of fear and fragile trust. His small body ached with exhaustion. His lips were dry and cracked, his stomach gnawed with hunger. Yet beside him, the large gray wolf remained constant, a living shield against the dangers that lurked in the shadows. The boy no longer flinched at the animal's presence. Somewhere between terror and wonder, he had come to accept the creature as his protector. The wolf's golden eyes watched him closely, every move measured and cautious. Each time Arjun stumbled, the wolf stopped. When he grew too weak to stand, the wolf nudged him gently, coaxing him forward with quiet urgency. It was as if the animal understood that time was running out, and that Arjun's only chance of survival depended on staying together. Far away, searchers were gaining ground. The discovery of the tracks, small human footprints, shadowed by larger paw prints, had injected new life into their efforts. Debate flared among the searchers. Some feared the worst, that a wolf had been tracking the lost child, perhaps preparing to strike. Others, more hopeful, believed the wolf's constant presence meant something far stranger. Regardless, they pressed on, following the trail as it wound through dense undergrowth and across shallow streams. Guided by instinct and growing determination, they closed the distance between them and the boy. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Arjun grew weaker. His legs trembled beneath him, and his steps became sluggish. Cold seeped into his bones, and he struggled to keep his eyes open. Sensing the boy's fading strength, the wolf made a sudden decision. Without warning, the animal darted away into the trees, leaving Arjun alone for the first time in hours. Fear clawed at the boy's chest. But moments later, the wolf returned, carrying in its jaws a small, freshly killed rabbit. With surprising gentleness, the wolf placed the prey at the boy's feet. Arjun stared, too weak to react at first. The wolf gave a soft, encouraging nudge. Understanding flickered in the boy's eyes. Clumsy fingers reached for the rabbit, and though the meat was raw and unfamiliar, hunger overcame hesitation. The nourishment revived him, just enough to push back the creeping fog of weakness. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to survive another hour. Enough to take a few more steps. Enough to keep going. Elsewhere, danger still stalked the edges of the forest. A pack of jackals, sensing an opportunity, had begun to circle closer. Their sharp eyes fixed on the vulnerable child, their hungry minds weighing the odds. But the wolf stood its ground. Hackles raised, teeth bared, it let out a deep, menacing growl. The jackals hesitated, then faded back into the shadows, unwilling to challenge the wolf's fierce protection. For the third night in a row, the wolf curled itself around Arjun, sharing its warmth against the creeping chill of dusk. Above them, the stars emerged, glittering in the ink-black sky. Despite the cold, despite the hunger, despite the danger, Arjun survived. Because the forest, in all its wildness and unpredictability, had granted him a guardian. As dawn broke on the fourth day, the search party closed in. The trail of footprints and paw prints had grown clearer, more recent. Then they saw it. The unmistakable marks of a child's bare feet, pressed into the mud beside the deep imprints of a wolf's paws. Their hearts pounded with a mixture of hope and dread. What they found next stole their breath away. Through a break in the trees, the searchers spotted the boy, curled at the base of a large tree, his small form fragile and still. And there, not 5 paces away, stood the wolf. It was a sight none of them would ever forget. The wolf stood tall, its gaze fixed on the searchers, muscles tense, but posture calm. There was no snarl, no charge, only a watchful, steady presence, as if weighing the intentions of the humans who had entered its domain. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. No one moved. No one dared breathe. Then, with a slow, deliberate step, one of the searchers raised his hands, palms open, showing he meant no harm. The wolf's ears twitched. It took a single step back, then another, its eyes never leaving the boy. And then, in a graceful turn, it slipped silently into the shadows of the forest, leaving the child in the care of his people. Rushing forward, the searchers cradled Arjun in their arms. He was weak, dehydrated, and chilled to the bone, but alive. Tears filled their eyes as relief washed over them. One of the searchers whispered, almost to himself, "It protected him all this time." Others nodded in silent awe, too moved to speak. The boy stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. His gaze drifted toward the spot where the wolf had disappeared. A faint, exhausted smile touched his lips. "Friend," he murmured, the only word he could manage. The searchers shared a look of wonder. No one could deny it. The bond between boy and beast had been real, and it had saved his life. As they carried Arjun back toward the village, the forest seemed to exhale, as if releasing its hold on the child. Sunlight broke through the clouds, casting warm beams across their path. Behind them, unseen, a pair of golden eyes watched from the shadows. The wolf, having completed its vigil, melted into the wilderness once more, a silent guardian returning to the untamed world. And though the boy's journey through the forest had ended, the story of his survival was only beginning. As the search party emerged from the dense forest, carrying Arjun in their arms, the entire village rushed to meet them. Mothers wept openly, fathers clasped their hands together in gratitude, and children stared wide-eyed at the boy who had been lost to the wild and somehow returned. Arjun's mother pushed through the crowd, her eyes brimming with tears. The moment she saw her son, she cried out his name and crumpled to her knees, holding him tightly, as if she might lose him again if she let go. His small, dirt-smeared face buried in her shoulder, Arjun managed a faint smile. "I'm home," he whispered, his voice barely audible but filled with quiet triumph. Around them, the villagers spoke in hushed voices. Questions filled the air. How had he survived? Where had he found shelter? What had kept him safe for 3 long, harrowing days? The searchers exchanged glances, struggling to find the words. Finally, one of them stepped forward. "There was a wolf," he said simply. "It watched over him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A wolf! They had feared predators, believed wolves to be the threat stalking the child. But no, this wolf had not hunted him. It had guarded him, protected him, saved him. As Arjun was brought inside his home and laid upon soft blankets, the village healer tended to his scrapes and bruises. She shook her head in disbelief. 3 days, she murmured, dabbing gently at a wound. 3 days in the wilderness, and he comes back alive. When Arjun opened his eyes, his mother gently took his hand. "My child," she said softly, "how did you survive?" Arjun's gaze grew distant, as though he was seeing something far away, not with his eyes, but with his heart. "The wolf," he replied. "My friend." And then, slowly, haltingly, he began to tell his story. He spoke of the first terrifying night, when he had cried until his throat was raw. He described the glowing eyes in the dark and how he thought, at first, the end had come. But then he told them how the wolf had not attacked, how it had settled nearby, its warm body shielding him from the cold. He spoke of how it had stood guard against other creatures, how it had nudged him toward water, even brought him food when he was too weak to move. The villagers listened, spellbound. The story was more than remarkable. It was a miracle. News of Arjun's survival spread quickly beyond the village. At first, nearby towns and regions carried the tale, retelling it with growing wonder. Soon, local newspapers printed headlines: "Boy lost in forest found alive, protected by wild wolf." Journalists arrived, eager to speak with Arjun and his family. As they listened to his quiet recounting, many found themselves moved to tears. Photographs of the boy, small and fragile yet alive against all odds, appeared in papers across the country. The story transcended borders. International news outlets picked it up, fascinated by the astonishing bond between a human child and a wild predator. Articles filled with headlines like "Wild Protector: How a Wolf Saved a Lost Child," "Nature's Guardian Angel," "Beast or Savior?" "The Wolf Who Chose Compassion." People across the world shared the story, marveling at the unexpected kindness of the wild. Experts weighed in, offering theories. Some believed the wolf had mistaken Arjun for one of its own young, drawn by his helpless cries and vulnerable state. Others suggested a deeper, more mysterious instinct at play. A moment of pure compassion, beyond explanation. Whatever the cause, no one could deny the outcome. A boy was alive, and a wolf had made it so. The story ignited conversations about the misunderstood nature of wolves, long seen only as villains in tales of the wild. Perhaps, people began to wonder, there was more to these creatures than fearsome fangs and stealthy hunts. Perhaps there was empathy. Perhaps, beneath the fierce exterior, beat hearts capable of mercy. For Arjun, the days following his rescue passed in a gentle blur. He was weak but recovering, nourished by his family's care and the warmth of the village's love. But as he rested, he often found his thoughts drifting back to the forest, to the silent companion who had stood watch over him through freezing nights and fear-filled days. "Will I ever see him again?" Arjun asked his father one evening, his small voice laced with longing. His father, a man hardened by years of farming and survival, found his eyes softening. "Perhaps," he said gently, "the forest keeps its own secrets." Arjun nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. Even if he never laid eyes on the wolf again, the bond they had shared would never fade. It had been written into his heart, as deeply as the lines of the earth itself. Months later, as Arjun grew stronger, life in the village slowly returned to normal. But one thing had changed forever: the way the people saw the world beyond their fields. Where once they had feared the forest and its predators, they now looked upon it with new respect, even gratitude. Folk tales were told around evening fires, but now they carried a different tone. No longer were wolves described only as threats lurking in the dark. They were remembered as guardians, too, as protectors of life, as creatures capable of unexpected grace. Children listened with wide eyes, imagining wolves not as monsters, but as majestic beings that walked the line between fear and wonder. And whenever the howl of a wolf echoed through the night, it was not met with dread. It was met with a quiet, reverent silence, a tribute to the creature who had once saved one of their own. Years passed. Arjun grew, his body growing strong again, his mind shaped by the memory of his ordeal. He never forgot the wolf. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between dawn and daylight, he thought he could still feel the warmth of that fur beside him, still see those golden eyes watching over him with silent vigilance. And though he never returned to the depths of the forest, part of him always remained there, connected by an invisible thread to the wild guardian who had given him a second chance at life. The story of Arjun and the wolf lived on, passed from village to village, from generation to generation. It became a legend not of fear, but of hope, a reminder that even in the most dangerous corners of the world, there exists a glimmer of kindness, a reminder that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and that in the wild heart of the forest, beneath the cloak of tooth and claw, compassion can still burn brightly.